93.1 in St. Anne, 93.3 in Trelawney, St. James, and parts of Kingston, St. Andrew, and St. Catherine, 93.5 in St. Mary and Westmoreland, 93.7 in Hanover, Kingston, and St. Andrew, and St. Thomas, 93.9 in Portland, St. Elizabeth, Manchester, and Clarendon. NewsTalk 93 FM, heard everywhere.
The evening edition is refreshing and entertaining drive-time radio weekdays 5:30 to 7 p.m. Join us Mondays to Wednesdays with Lambert Brown and Thursdays and Fridays with Delano C. Wright for captivating discussion, topical analysis, social and political commentary. Remember, tune in to the evening edition Monday to Friday between 5:30 and 7 p.m. right here on NewsTalk 93 FM, Drive-Time Radio.
Good evening. Welcome to the evening edition, a show reviewing the issues of the day and probing matters relevant to our daily lives. I am Lambert Brown. We broadcast to you live from the studios of NewsTalk 93 FM right here on the University of the West Indies, Mona campus. It's a rainy day. It's a wet day on the campus. And I like to say it, type of day that is not productive in our country. More akin to reproductive type activities. But we have work to do, and we have a lot to talk about today. So let me share with you where we're going. As the month of February ticks off, I want to talk to you for a little bit about some matters happening since last week. At 5:40 or thereabout, we're going to talk with the president of the Jamaica Manufacturers Association, Mr. Brian Pengele. Are job losses on the table because of the waiver removal? And why has the waiver removal taken place? Was there a call from the private sector for them to be removed? We're going to discuss that with Brian Pengele later on. At 6:05, much talk, and mainly talk, about the National Housing Trust and that $11 billion per year that is going to go to the government. Let's see what is behind it. We're going to speak to the chairman of the National Housing Trust, Mr. Easton Douglas. And we're going to talk also with chairman of the Pan-Caribbean Asset Management Limited, a big private sector spokesperson, Mr. Colin Steele. At 6:30, we go to school with our teacher, Ralston Iman, and we look forward to a very interesting discussion there with Ralston and myself. And of course, you get a chance to join in and share your views with us. Last week, cast your mind back the week before. What were we hearing? We were hearing from the panic mongers in the society that the IMF team had packed up and left Jamaica. That's what they said. We also heard that Dr. Peter Phillips had rushed off to Washington because there was crisis in the negotiation. And some even said that last Monday, the Prime Minister and Dr. Phillips would announce that they are breaking off from the IMF. Well, that is what the panic mongers gave us. By the end of the week, we realized a different thing. The Prime Minister announced no break from the IMF, as much as we don't like the IMF. But she announced, along with Dr. Peter Phillips, Minister of Finance, a debt exchange program. And as I listen to the news, I am beginning to see that debt exchange program, the National Debt Exchange, gaining traction. And several big companies are committing to it, and even the small retail bond dealers are committing to it. No better no their John shop, they're saying. So the government is going to get the debt exchange. And Friday, news came, surprising so many people, that the government and the IMF staff have basically arrived at an agreement. So that the matter of an IMF agreement for Jamaica will go to the board. But what the IMF people said, that was kind of shocking to some and sent some in a quarreling panic, was that instead of 400 million to be gotten under the agreement, as Mr. Audley Shaw had so boastfully declared, it would be 750 million US dollars. Almost the same amount Mr. Shaw got and didn't do what he was to do. Must have been shocking for Mr. Shaw's credibility went down the drain. And then Mr. Shaw said the agreement will be June. Well, Mr. Shaw, the people are saying they are ready to go to their board in March. And that might very well be possible. So Audley Shaw got stumped. Went down the wicket, missed the ball, and got stumped. He's out. Credibility in shatters. And so the question I ask you, can you really trust Mr. Shaw and all the noise he's making, apart from people saying that he's the opposition spokesperson and quarreling? Because he quarrels at everything. Quarrels with the IMF. People are asking, can you really trust him? And so I went back and I looked at 2006. Mrs. Portia Simpson Miller, Prime Minister, announced that she would borrow from the National Insurance Fund $1 billion to create small business and jobs in the Jamaican economy, to stimulate the economy. The opposition opposed it. They even threatened to take it to court. They didn't go to court. But when they came to power in 2007, they took a bigger loan than the $1 billion that Mrs. Simpson Miller planned to take from the NIF, the National Insurance Fund. So you can't trust their word. They say one thing in opposition, and when they came to government, they did an entirely different thing, because they took more money from the NIF than they complained that Mrs. Simpson Miller was going to take to stimulate the economy. And a good question would be asked, what did they do with the money they took from the NIF? Then go back to 2005. Dr. Omar Davis, then Minister of Finance, called for a discussion between the opposition and the government on energy issues and whether or not there should be a tax on gasoline. The opposition, Mr. Bruce Golding, Mr. Shaw, all of them opposed it. They opposed any gas and any tax on gas. They said it wasn't good for Jamaica. Then they came to power. And in 2009, they imposed a big $9+ billion of taxes on fuel. Much more than Dr. Omar Davis would have put on. So if we had solved the economic problems if we had gone towards solving the economic problem with that tax in 2005, we'd be a far way better off today. No, they oppose it. And then, guess what? When they came to government, they did it worse than Dr. Davis had planned to do on the tax. And then in 2010, in government, Mr. Audley Shaw signs a letter of intent with the IMF for a 27 months standby agreement. That letter was signed on the 19th, when the ministry paper was sent to Parliament on the 19th of January 2010. In fact, the letter was written 15 days before by Mr. Shaw to Mr. Strauss-Kahn, Dominic Strauss-Kahn, head of the IMF. In that letter, Mr. Audley Shaw spoke about a wage freeze and salaries in the public sector. That's at page 7 of the appendix, number 11. Then, Mr. Shaw also in that letter on page 12 spoke about tax, the waivers and removing the waivers. Yes. So how comes today Mr. Shaw is complaining about removal of waivers when I challenge Mr. Shaw, come on this program and let us look at your letter of intent, which is on the internet, which anybody can find. Ministry paper number 9 of 2010, dated 19th of January 2010, or your letter to the IMF of the 15th of January 2010. You, Mr. Shaw, spoke about the waivers. So, oh no, you're criticizing the government. Okay, you haven't praised the IMF on the 17th of December 2010. Why are you now criticizing the IMF with such vigor? Why are you upset that the IMF has agreed to a staff level agreement with the government negotiating team? Why, Mr. Shaw, would you be so upset about that? I really wonder. And then it struck me, because this is an agreement on behalf of the Jamaican people done by the PNP government, is this why Mr. Shaw is upset? And some people ask, is the reason for all this upset because the tax measures, and incidentally, Mr. Shaw, remember in December 2009, when you had in that year, 2009, you had 5 different tax packages. You announced 5 different tax packages. One of which, in December, was for $21 billion. $21 billion. That's 16 from 21. That's $5 billion more than what you are now calling the biggest tax package. In December 2009, Mr. Shaw announced the biggest tax package, 21 billion. In fact, it was 26 billion, but some give back was in that. So, Mr. Shaw, are you upset because some of the measures in this tax package didn't put increase on the price of flour and chicken back and sugar and rice? Isn't that where Mr. Oney said you should broaden the tax base, you should put GCT on everything? Isn't that what he said in his budget speech? That's a question I'm asking. Isn't that what he said in his budget speech? This government, Mrs. Simpson Miller government, has said she's not going to put the taxes on those issues. She's going to reverse some of the tax measures taken last year and before in 2008 and put it, as the Observer said in their editorial, was it last week, those who can pay more should pay more. What did they say in their editorial? To whom much is given, much is expected. That seems to be where the government is at. That don't put the burden on the poor. Put it on those who can afford it. Put it on the wealthier sections of the society. I think that's a progressive move. Now, that won't get you street demonstration, Mr. Shaw. And so you're angry, you're upset, you're quarreling with everybody. Why? Because the government didn't put the taxes on the poor? Because you, Mr. Shaw, had agreed with the IMF for a big primary surplus. It is the same agreement, more or less, that you left unfinished, that this government now has to take up. And so, Mr. Shaw, the spokesman and quarreling, some people call him, need to understand that the question asked last week, whether people are, or 2 weeks ago, that people are enemy of the state, is answered either by a no, or we look at your conduct and we say, no, we know why that question has not yet been answered. Because there may very well be some truth in the way people are behaving when they are refusing to put the interests of Jamaica ahead of their partisan desire for power. Power which the people voted you out of in 2011, December. That's the reality. The people. Welcome back to the evening edition. We're going to be joined now by the president of the Jamaica Manufacturers Association, Mr. Brian Pengele. And the manufacturers are up in mud because the waivers are going, and the waivers could affect the manufacturing sector. Good evening, Brian.
Good evening, Lambert. Good
How are
evening to
you?
your listeners. I'm well, thank you. Thank you for having me on.
No problem. The waivers are going. In fact, if it was an auction, they would say going, gone. Because the notice has been out there for a long time that this could no longer stand.
Right.
Is it catching you all by surprise?
Not at all, Lambert. I think we need to differentiate and make sure we're very clear on what we're talking about. There are two types of waivers. There is one that is legislated, and those are not an issue. And the majority for the manufacturing sector, the majority of our raw materials come in under legislated waivers. What is at risk is what's called discretionary waivers, where you allow, it is at the discretion of the Ministry of Finance with final sign-off from the minister himself as to whether you would get a waiver on a certain item. And there is no doubt, Lambert, that over the years, when you give people discretion, certain things happen. And there's no doubt that there were some games, I think, being played in there, and that area needed some tightening up. The issue we have is that in doing the tightening up and in deciding the way forward, we really need to understand the implications of what we're signing up to and make sure that we're not signing something that's going to cause serious damage to our growth strategies, because we have to, as we've all said and signed up to, we have to find a way to grow ourselves out of the issues we're in.
You see, Brian, what strikes me is this. In 2010, at the very beginning of 2010, Ministry Paper number 9 of 2010, laid in the House of Representatives on the 19th of January. It is the Ministry Paper dealing with the IMF agreement. In that, the IMF agreement of 2010, in that they spoke about issues of the waiver.
Correct.
And they made it very clear that that was going to be a thing of the past.
Correct. But
then could that, in fact, item number 25 in the appendix said key tax policy reforms will also be undertaken. These are things that should have been done from 2010.
There are things that should have been addressed already, and for whatever reason, some of them were not. So let us take one. The one that deals with machinery. There used to be, as you would know, a program called the Modernization of Industry.
Yes.
And that's one of the first things that the IMF picked up on. And for whatever reason, they said no, they didn't want discretionary or waivers. They didn't want waivers signed for the purchasing of new equipment or equipment to improve manufacturing facilities. We took it up with the then minister, who looked at the situation and said, but if we're going to grow ourselves, if we're going to grow efficiency, if we're going to allow people to expand and invest in Jamaica, you need to be doing something to encourage them to do this. And since then, we have been able to get discretionary waivers signed where a manufacturer registered was either importing equipment to expand their plant, to make it more efficient, or indeed you had new investors coming into the market. What has now happened is that what is being proposed is that all discretionary waivers go completely. And the position we're saying is that doesn't really make any sense. Why would you take away incentives that are going to increase, A, potential investment, B, factories to expand, hire more people, make more goods for the domestic and export markets, and very importantly, modernize. We don't have a short-term solution on energy. One of the ways that a manufacturer or business person can control their cost base is to look for more modern and efficient, say, electric motors.
But Brian, when the negotiations was going on, they were going on with the IMF, Peter Phillips, the minister, said that this was one of the sticking points.
Exactly.
And he was trying to fight his best where the government would retain some decision. But what did the private sector do? They were calling for an IMF agreement. IMF, we want the agreement, we want the agreement. Forget.
Not only so.
And Mr. Onis, for example, said, forget trying to get the best agreement. Just get any agreement.
Well, I think, Lambert, you're putting a very broad brush on this thing. From day one, the manufacturers have said, you cannot sign up to something that is not going to allow production in this country to expand and to improve. And that was always a position.
You see, I found that the minister was lonely in seeking to defend the country by saying, we don't even know what is going to be the impact of removing the thing. But all he could hear in his ears is, sign, we want an IMF agreement. You are pussyfooting around. Get on, sign the agreement. The dollar is running. That's what he was hearing.
He was hearing that maybe from other sectors. He wasn't hearing that specifically from the manufacturers on this particular issue. We all agreed that we have to have an IMF agreement to stabilize the country, give us a little breathing room, get foreign investment, get multilateral funds running. Everybody agreed to that. No, there's no question. All we're saying is make sure what we're agreeing to for the long term, there's certain aspects of it that we just need to apply some sensibilities to and make sure we're doing the right thing. That's all.
I agree. Well,
we're not abandoning him, never did abandon him.
Listen to what was carried in the Glean on the 15th of March last year, 2012. A private sector working group appearing before a special parliamentary committee on tax reform declared yesterday that the government should eliminate all waivers and incentives to create greater equity in the tax system. It went on to say, we are recommending the cessation of granting of a wide range of incentives as well as waivers for GCT, general consumption, import duties as well as imports that are currently granted. That's what the PSOJ working group told the parliamentary committee.
Agreed, but when you dive into that and you actually dive into the document itself, it went a lot further than the headline that Gleaner was carrying. What it said was we agreed that on certain items waivers have to go. What we called for was a way of widening the tax net, and therefore if you were a tax-paying company or an individual, you could then claim back, if approved, the GCT or whatever duty that was. So if you were not a legal or were not a person paying or paying tax, you would be out of pocket because you would pay it at the port. Legal people could then claim it back. In addition to that, there was a whole raft of measures called for which talked about, tax rates, etc. But it always had in it a clawback because we all know it, we have to widen the tax net. So we have to go deeper into the paper than that.
Well, I'm prepared to go deeper, but I mean, I saw a thing, I looked back in researching today. Yeah, we were told that it is the rich who benefited from the waiver. This is not some socialist saying that. That was a private sector working group saying that. It was the rich who benefited. Only, I think, 11% of waivers benefited the poor. Those are the statistics.
Do you know what the percentage of waivers, of these discretionary waivers? The manufacturing sector in 2011, 2012 were only 1.7% of total waivers. The manufacturing sector.
How much? So 1 point how much?
1.7%.
1.7%?
of total waivers.
So manufacturers shouldn't be damaged significantly if the waivers are removed then?
Well, the point is that, no, those are waivers that were granted without certain things, like sugar. Okay?
Sugar.
That's one that's there.
That we're importing sugar and molasses.
Well, molasses, if what is happening here, and I think you know it probably better than I, is the local distillers buy all the molasses that is produced locally. But what is produced locally is not enough to meet the needs for their processes. So they get a letter that says, yes, you can go ahead and import. Once you've consumed all the local molasses, you can import molasses from externally to keep your plants going.
And they don't, without paying taxes?
Yes, and there was a tax relief for that. Correct.
I suppose.
So,
and
that is...
We have a Trinidadian company owning one of the brewery, and now Italian company, the brewery.
I don't know about that.
It was a Trinidadian sold to Italian company now.
Oh, Italian company, yes, yeah, man. Well, but hold on a second. That's a totally different argument, you know. That's a totally different argument.
I know. The question is who benefits?
Well, I would hopefully Jamaica is going to benefit. Hopefully, for people to work. Hopefully, we're going to continue to grow our local production and our export. That's got to be the name of the game.
Brian, maybe tomorrow we have to pick it up again. We're up against the news. We want to look at the employment impact, and so the pleasure is mine, because we want to defend Jamaica. We want to defend Jamaican business people. We want to defend Jamaican manufacturers. We want the best for our country.
I think we're all in the same place. You and I are exactly there.
Definitely. Thank you very much, Mr. Brian Pengele, President of the Jamaica Manufacturers Association. We go to the news. After the news, we come back. Housing trust, 11 billion per year. Could it be spent doing housing? And why is it being given to the government? Or why is the government taking it? Is it legal? Welcome back to the evening edition. Last week, the government announced a set of tax measures, I think just under $16 billion in new taxes. But they also indicated that they're going to be seeking from the National Housing Trust the sum of 11 billion per year for the next 4 years in order to help them to meet the target set under the IMF agreement that is expected, and to put Jamaica back on a safe place. Then a set of organizations representing very few people, CAPI, some other political organization, have threatened to take the trust and the government to court. I don't think they understand the story. There wasn't just took out an ad in the papers under the signature of the chairman over the weekend. And joining me now to discuss this $11 billion and its implication are Mr. Colin Steele, financial analyst, and the chairman of the National Housing Trust, Mr. Easton Douglas. Good evening, Chairman and Colin.
Good evening, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Chairman Douglas?
Evening, how are you?
Good, and now that you're on, let me declare interest. I am a member of the board of the National Housing Trust. And therefore I am privileged to some information and some things. I declare interest, but it will not prevent me from sharing knowledge with the people, because I find a lot of ignorance is at play in this. Let me start, Chairman, with Colin Steele, financial analyst. Colin, this move of 11 billion, What's your take? How you feel about it?
Okay, well, from a general point of view, the objective of the tax package and also the contribution from NHT is to balance Jamaica's budget. That is a major impact. Now, I don't think that a lot of people understand that balancing the budget, although it may cause short-term pain, is going to have significant long-term benefits. I'll give you an example. Balancing the budget puts the government in a position where it does not need to increase its borrowing. But every year the government pays back billions of dollars in interest to the market. I estimate that the coming year, the government will pay back over $90 billion in interest to local investors. If they can't buy government paper because the government is not incurring a deficit, they would have to redeploy those funds. And one place they redeploy those funds, well, they will invest in real assets for a change. And one of the biggest markets that they will be able to invest in is the housing market.
The housing market?
The housing market.
Why so?
Well, we have seen over the last couple of years mortgage rates come down from 19.8% in the private sector to 12.75%, now to 9.3%, and I predict it will continue downwards. What is going to happen is that the mortgage market is likely to be expanded by this move.
So instead of borrowing government papers, investors may now invest in areas like housing, you're saying, which will bring jobs and add value to the gross domestic product of the country.
Absolutely, and pension funds and life insurance companies will want to buy mortgage paper. It's long term, it will give out a better rate than government paper, and it's secured with the asset. So in most developed markets, the mortgage market is huge. Our mortgage market is small in comparison. But balancing the budget is an overriding positive that will cause growth in the economy and particularly in housing.
So you're saying here that the issue is good for Jamaica?
Absolutely. The reason NHT was necessary, apart from the fact that there was and is a shortage of housing, one of the reasons that NHT was necessary was because private rates were very, very high. Now I'm saying to you that what's going to happen is private rates will continue to come down. As I mentioned, they've come down from 10 years ago to 9 today. And I predict that they will come down further. So the affordability of mortgages will improve. The amount of money that's available for mortgages will improve. And so my view is that this is a worthwhile and beneficial contribution.
Well, let me ask you this, Colin. Could it be done without this $11 billion from the NHT? And then I come to you, Chairman Douglas.
Sure. The question is where else will you take it from? The truth is that
you could put tax on flour, you could put tax on rice, you could put tax on chicken back and sanitary napkins, you could put things on the things that affect the poor. You could do that.
Well, each measure has implications, and I think that the implications of this measure are positive.
Good. Well, let me bring in the chairman of the Housing Trust. Chairman Douglas,
Senator.
The newspaper said that you are heading in the wrong direction. Some lawyer said that. Our one lawyer, Mr. U. Wildman, is quoted saying you're heading in the wrong direction. Others who don't have a clue are saying that they're going to take legal action against the trust because this is illegal. One lawyer said it is unconstitutional. What says you, Chairman Douglas?
I don't know why he has said we are going in the wrong direction, because I have not heard him pointing out what is the right direction. but as far as the legal implications are concerned, the board of the National Housing Trust and the management of the National Housing Trust, they just go frivolously agreeing to the contribution of this 11 billion without determining whether there was the authority for that. The National Housing Trust was established by the National Housing Trust Act. It's therefore a creature of statute and is therefore a statutory body. As a statutory body, it becomes a public body, as defined by the Public Bodies Management and Accountability Act. The Public Bodies Management and Accountability Act gives the Minister of Finance the authority to draw down on surpluses, retained earnings, and profits from any public body.
But some say the housing trust is a trust, Chairman Douglas, and therefore that makes it exempt from all of this.
We have two legal opinions, Senator Brown. We have a legal opinion from a private firm of practitioners, and we have a legal opinion from the Solicitor General. Both legal opinions coincide to indicate that the trust is not in the true, strict legal sense a trust. So we have all of this as an opinion. We don't mind a legal challenge if anybody wants to challenge the trust, because it is always good in a democratic society to go to the courts.
Bring it on, you say, Chairman.
Sorry?
Bring on the challenge, you say.
Bring on the challenge. Let us go to the Supreme Court, and it needs be to the Privy Council to determine what is the situation. Now, unfortunately, we'll have to spend money to do it. But as I said, in a democratic society, it is always good to have legal testing and legal precedents. And if Cappy and Mr. Wildman wants to place the challenge, who am I to say that they should?
But I hope they will be able to pay the cost, though.
Sorry?
I hope they'll be able to pay the cost.
Who will be able to pay the cost?
I hope they will be able to pay the cost when they lose.
Well, I'm sure that they must have contemplated all that, and maybe they are confident enough to know that they will have a case that they can win. But we have no fear, let me put it that way, from the National Housing Trust point of view. And I am very glad that I have been invited to this program with a finance analyst of the caliber of Colin Steele, because I've heard what he has said, and I hope the country and the contributors have heard what he has said. Because what he has really said is that there will be tremendous benefits from the contribution of the National Housing Trust in terms of not only a contribution to fiscal consolidation, but also possibly, as he has predicted, to bring down mortgage rates.
To bring down mortgage rates?
I beg your pardon?
To bring down mortgage rates so that people will be able to pay lower for the cost of their houses.
Yeah,
is that what you're saying?
Yes, because the National Housing Trust have mortgage rates now of between 0 to 7%. The next lowest mortgage rate that you can get is 9.39%. Now, can you imagine if it can be brought down to the levels or even near the level of the National Housing Trust at a time when the National Housing Trust is concentrating on providing more houses for the low-income people earning from 500,000 the minimum wage to 10,000 per week.
Well, let me ask you this. Is the Housing Trust going to be less houses this year than you had planned before the 11 billion take? And are you going to focus where you're building these houses?
Well, at the moment, we have 8 schemes that are now being done. And those schemes we are committed to, and they will be finished. 6 of them are in the category above the 10,000 per week, and 2 of them are at the low income level. We are going to be continuing those because we are committed, we cannot stop. We have money that we are going to spend to provide more houses in the next financial year, and we also are going to be providing more mortgages in the next financial year. Okay? But when people are saying that we are sitting down on a lot of money, and that is why we could have given 11 million. Every year, Senator Brown, that we get contributions from our contributors, we have to make up that contribution from some of the reserves that we have in order to meet the targets that we set each year.
So let me see, both the contributions from the employer and the employee, the housing trust is spending each year more than you collect.
That is correct.
How are you able to do that? And I'm going to ask Colin later on about solvency of the trust. How are you able to do that?
We are able to do that because we have different areas in which the trust has its funds. Okay? We have cash of $5 billion. We have investment of $21 billion. We have self-insurance of $6 billion because every scheme that we do and every contributor that get a benefit, the house is insured. We have refunds which are ongoing now of between $2.5 to $3 billion per year. We have to reserve as much as $14 billion for those persons who may want to claim more than the 7 years, so that if they come, we can pay them. There has never been an occasion, and there will not be an occasion as a result of this $44 billion.
Well, Chairman, let me bring in Colin Steele. Let me bring in Colin Steele a little bit here on this. Colin Steele, as a financial analyst, is the trust insolvent? Is it likely to go broke? And is a major risk being taken by the board?
Let me just say that I've reviewed the financial statement of the trust. The trust has a capital base of, I think, about $90 billion, or close to it. That capital base is larger than all of the commercial banks in Jamaica put together. Bank of Nova Scotia, NCB, Royal Bank, STIB, etc.
Sorry, can you repeat that, Colin? You said the capital. Can you repeat that? The capital base of the National Housing Trust is stronger
than all of the commercial banks put together.
All of the banks in Jamaica put
all
together.
Of the commercial banks.
The housing trust is stronger than them.
Has a larger capital base.
Yeah.
It has a loan portfolio of approximately 140 billion, I believe it is.
That is correct, Colin.
And it generates significant cash flow. And it has significant inflows each year from contributors. So there are many ways to utilize that strong capital base. One of them being the way that has been proposed in this.
Well, let me put something to the chairman. So you're saying it is solvent, it is strong, and there's no fear of this 11 billion creating undue pressure on it. But Chairman Douglas,
no fear at all.
Chairman Douglas,
yes.
I read somebody like Garth Rattree today, and there are others who share the view which says, well, if you have all this money, why aren't you building more houses and taking people off the gully sides and so forth?
Because notwithstanding the fact that we have the money and it is invested in all sorts of different instruments, and also, as you have heard, in mortgages, we have 168,000 mortgages that we manage,
168,000?
168,000 mortgages.
So that is homes built for people.
Okay? Now, of course, the National Housing Trust would like to get rid of all of the 600,000 people that are living in squatter settlement. We would like to deal with all of the inner city problems where people are living in conditions that are not fit for human habitation. But you must also balance that with the capacity to do it. If we had that 44 billion now to spend, we don't have the development and construction capacity
to do it.
And this is why the board took the decision to start to spend $10 billion to train people. Because
10 million.
Trying.
10 million. 10 million.
10 million to train youngsters to get into the construction industry. Because we are planning at the level of the board and the management to go back into medium and small size contractors, where we think it will be more productive, it will be spread across the board in terms of some of the development, the small development that we have to do. And the multiplier effect in terms of the economy will be tremendous, because the National Housing Trust may be seen as a separate entity, but it is inextricably wound up in the government policies and fiscal and economic strategies.
Well, Chairman,
it has to be.
Let me use my conflict here and put this to you. The housing trust over the last couple of years have built a lot of houses in inner city housing, invested heavily in it, in trying to change the conditions. Am I correct on that, Chairman?
We have built houses that we have just built. The National Housing Trust, when you go to look at the inner city transformation in places like Monaltree, Trenchtown,
West Kingston,
it is just a tremendous transformation of people's lives, and that is what we are talking about.
And the Housing Trust have been spending money in that. Have been subsidizing that significantly.
As we speak, and as you know, we have just launched what we call a first step housing.
Yes.
Where we have been able in partnership with Food for the Poor to be building some reinforced concrete houses as a start for $1.77 million. And we have upgraded it to show people how it can be upgraded. And we have been giving, or we have grants of $1.2 million to each beneficiary so that they can spend it to upgrade their house.
And Chairman,
we also have home grants to install solar panels to help people with their electricity.
You said grants. That's money that will be given to those householders.
Given. They don't have to pay back.
And
that is what we have been doing. We have been subsidizing housing development from some of those funds that we have.
Well, let's take
over the years.
Let's take the public sector housing out by Twickenham Park, Union Estate. That got a lot of subsidies.
Oh yeah.
From the trust.
Exactly.
So that people can get it at the price they got it.
So you know, really
sugar workers.
Yes, sugar workers.
And there's hotel workers, and there's a plan to assist the army.
Exactly.
And those first step housing, I believe, is a 3 billion or 6 billion that is dedicated for people down at the bottom of the ladder with those first step houses. Was it 3 or 6 billion that's going to be the total cost?
It is going to be 6 billion.
6 billion.
6 billion. They are going to be building 50 houses per month, 600,000 per year. That is where we are
600 per year.
600 houses per year, and we are looking
times 6 years.
As we are looking forward, as they develop the system and more expertise and have more medium and small size contractors to even increase this. Because when I went down to Hamden, where we started the program, you had about 3 persons that are usually employed by Food for the Poor from Portmore and Kingston. And you had another 8 or 9 persons from the location employed down there.
From down in the Bounty Hall, Tilston area,
from down in the Bounty Hall area.
But let me ask you this, Chairman. You're focusing in building houses for the smaller people in the society.
Yes.
That's a decision your board took. Your board, which was only appointed last year, April.
Yes.
And you see the trust as assisting in stimulating the national economy.
Oh, definitely. We have started. And what you must remember, we are not saying that we are neglecting the other contributors. As you know, the board is now trying to bring about more equity in the distribution of houses to contributors. Because we have about 500,000 contributors from the working population of 1.3 million. And what we found was that the majority, which are low-income earners, 300,000, as against the other 200,000. The 200,000 were getting 45% of the benefits, while the 300,000 were getting 11% of the benefits.
Chairman, you have to come back about. Let me ask Colin this before we leave. Chairman, you have to talk to me another time. Colin, a caller wants to know if the money from that the NHT has, is it public money or is it from the contributors of the NHT? As a financial analyst, how do you respond to that?
Well, if it comes from retained earnings and surpluses, then it's the NHT's money.
So it's the NHT, but does it mean it is the contributors or the NHT as a public body, which is what the chairman seems to be saying?
Well, I don't want to get into the legal aspect of it. What I'm saying is that if a public body has surpluses, the government should have the right to move those surpluses where there are needs.
Well, let me put it this way, and it's not, I don't think, Chairman Douglas, it is the Central Treasury Management, but it is the Public Bodies Management Act, Public PBMA, the Public Bodies Management Act, right? That
the Public Bodies Management and Accountability Act.
And that is what is applicable here. But
and the money is coming from surpluses.
And it is akin to what Mr. Ardlishaw put in and boasts about with Mr. Golding, the Central Treasury Management. That's what Colin seems to be saying. That system says government have money, borrowing from government at interest rate, instead of government using that money to do other things. Isn't that the concept behind Mr. Shaw Central Treasury Management system, which he signed off with the IMF in 2010?
Yes, it is. But also the government has the power to tax. There are several ways that this could be done.
Yeah.
So I don't think that I don't think there's a problem in terms of taking the funds. Obviously, it needs to be done in a solid way, and Mr. Douglas has indicated that this process got a legal opinion.
And it appears to me this is sharing a burden and saving poor people from having to pay more taxes. Colin Steele, financial analyst, thank you very much. Chairman Douglas?
Before you go, may I just ask you for 30 seconds?
Go ahead, Chairman. You'll pay for it one day.
To hear that I was told by the office that somebody called in to say that I should resign. They are warning me. I don't know if this is meant to be a threat, but I just want them to understand this. I believe it would be more negative for me to resign because I regard myself, without any aggrandizement, as a resource person to the National Housing Trust. And I think I can contribute better inside than outside.
And
so anybody... Okay.
You have been doing a wonderful job. And the ignorant, may they be informed, and may they take the time to learn the lessons. And Chairman, I know I'm out of time and I'm going to get into trouble. But was this an overnight decision in the Housing Trust?
Was this a
overnight decision?
No. The board of directors and the management have always been carrying out analysis with regard to anything like this that will happen. And this decision was taken 3 weeks approximately, about 3 weeks ago, and we entered into it with analytical aggression in order to be able to arrive at
analytical aggression.
As a matter of fact, the PSWG had recommended something similar a year ago.
The private sector working group?
Absolutely.
Good. So that it's clear, Chairman, a lot of thought has gone into this. We are ready for the debate. Bring it on, you say. Bring it on is what I believe your board is saying to those distractors out there. Thank you very much, Colin Steele.
Sure.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Welcome back to the evening edition. We're going to school with our teacher. Teacher?
Yes, Larry.
Ralston, how are you doing? Good evening. A rainy
Yeah,
afternoon, a wet afternoon.
Yeah, man. You good?
Yeah, man, I'm good. Let's make the best we can out of it. Best we can. I'd like to start, Ralston, by quoting quickly. Well, let me set it up this way. In 2009, in a supplementary budget speech late in the night in Parliament, Mr. Bruce Golding spoke about the chronic indebtedness facing Jamaica.
Right.
He said at that time that interest and principal, payment for interest and principal, was $325 billion. The total revenue Jamaica was receiving was $310 billion. We didn't pay a salary yet.
Right.
But we were behind by $15 billion.
Right.
We haven't bought medicine, fixed patrol. That's part of the state of the Jamaican economy.
Yeah, man.
He went, and this year, Ralston, the numbers are not looking much dissimilar. We are paying $327 billion for interest and amortization, principal payment. But our revenue was expected to be $347 billion.
Right.
That's not going to work out. It's going to be about $320, you say?
Right.
So we are still behind.
Yeah, man. The dynamics have not changed.
And so we are in a bind economically.
Right.
Because all the revenue we get in can't pay for the debt we owe.
Correct.
It hasn't gone yet to salary, and this year's salary is about $147 billion.
Yeah, man.
So we are told that, so we have to borrow to pay a salary.
Yeah, man.
And what about the aspirin up at the hospital?
Yeah, man.
And the road to
all of
fix,
those things.
and the gas to the police station.
Yeah, man. Capital budget,
Light
all of
bill.
those things.
So we are in a bad way.
Yeah, man.
The government has said we need to fix the fiscal. You and I and a number of us and more people are buying into that, saying it can't be just the fiscal, but you also have to go grow.
The economy.
You
Yeah.
have to grow the economy. Take us where you see things now, Ralston. Last week, Friday, staff agreement, indication that you may get an agreement in March, but that we're saying is not going to be enough.
Certainly not.
What is necessary?
Well, what we need to do at this point in time, or what we should have been doing while we negotiate the staff of the agreement with the IMF, is to make sure that we develop and implement an affordable energy policy, because energy is the biggest constraint to production in Jamaica at this point in time. Jamaica cannot produce competitively both for the domestic market and the export market because of the high cost of energy. Additionally, the cost of energy is the biggest item in the country's balance of payments, $2.4 billion in 2011. That was 150% of our total export earnings. So it means that we must develop an energy policy that reduces the impact on our balance of payments and also enables us to produce more for both export and the domestic market.
Well, let me answer this, Ralston. How easy? We've been talking energy for a long, long time.
For 40 years.
Is this something that can be done instantly?
No. Certainly not. But we have to start somewhere. So it might be a medium-term strategy where it takes 3 years, but at least we need to make a start. Even at the level of conservation. Not even that we are seeing, there's not even a public education program as to the impact of energy on the country's balance of payments, as to the impact of energy on the country's ability to compete internationally. And all those things.
And that is something, Ralston. We, every single one of us, down to the littlest baby, can play our role in conserving energy.
Energy, right.
We can do that.
That would be a game changer. That would change the dynamic significantly. Because one thing that we're concerned about, at least I'm concerned about, is that the government is projecting the debt as the problem, while the debt is a symptom of the problem. There's something wrong why we get ourselves into this debt. That something is that we're consuming more than we're producing, particularly of imported goods and services, such as oil and food. So we need to deal with production and economic expansion.
Well, Ralston, look at it today. The manufacturer saying we're importing 60 tons of molasses. We're importing sorrel. We're importing lime.
Right.
Anywhere in a Papine, anywhere in a St. Mary, anywhere in a Portland, we can find a whole lime tree that's ready for grow. Right. We're importing June plum.
Right. I mean, those things are things that we should be producing ourselves to create employment and to add to output and to reduce the debt. We can't reduce the debt alone by fiscal manipulation, debt exchanges, and imposing new taxes. So that is not going to get us anywhere in and of themselves.
So we're calling on the government to pivot, switch, dance, change, move over now, having settled off the staff level. While you finish off the other prior action, you need to be running like Bolt.
Right.
On the growth side.
Right, because you are far behind, because you should have been doing both things simultaneously.
Yeah. But I think, and I'm going to be fair, the government is, I'm sensing, recognizing the value and importance of this growth thing. I hear the manufacturers talking about it now. I hear the PSOJ talking about it. So maybe we can get a national consensus on this growth thing.
Well, we have to get a national consensus on growth. And we have to get a national consensus in recognizing that we are way behind. So you need to catch up, and you need to catch up fast. Because these things, the debt exchange and the tax package and all of those things just give you some breathing space, because they're going to take the economy down faster if they are not bolstered by strategies to grow the economy.
In other words, they're going to pull you down. But there are some things which you have to do to pull you up back.
Up faster. Right. Faster.
And without those things, all of this is a waste.
Right.
All right. Raleigh, there are some callers who want to join us. Let's see if we can share with them our thoughts and their thoughts. Good evening, caller.
Okay. Good evening, Mr. Brown.
Good evening, sir.
Well, son.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Brown.
Yes, caller, go ahead.
I just want to say this. You know, listening this evening, I am so much impressed that it reminds me when I used to live in London and listen to BBC go around the world and did their investigation and bring the news to the world.
They're on strike today, now.
How you have known and spent quality time to investigate the person who are making up the most noise in this country, and to find out about the person's credibility, what the person has said then, and what the person is now saying, what the person said in government, and what the person is now saying in opposition. And when we check the facts, we are saying that Mr. Shaw has no credibility in terms of standing before the public and making certain utterances. And I'll tell you why, Mr. Brown, shortly. I remember Mr. Shaw in 2002 spoke about in Manchester, some brand gave Volvo to policemen. And when the police special branch started to investigate to find out the evidence that he have, him hide. And we were told that he was misinformed. Now, I look around the world and look at people who serve Ralston as Minister of Finance. And I am saying that nobody who served in that portfolio behaved like Mr. Shaw. And it is a disgrace and a disincentive to our country that we should have somebody. When I look at the Observer, the 24th of March 2000,
Caller. Hold on a little. Let me just ask a question. Mr. Shaw, the spectacular Mr. Shaw, cursing the IMF, having taken
825 million
from them and not fulfill his agreement to them. How does that make you feel? Because that's the picture of Jamaica they go away with.
Mr. Brown, I'll tell you how I feel, sir. The Bible teaches us about the sins of ingratitude. It's like you take a person off the road and put him into your house who has nothing, and you see that person, and when you set that person, the person turn around and curse you. That is the kind of person I found out, Mr. Shaw. To me, look here, we the PNP, 94 said that to the IMF, and Mr. Shaw then went back and turned around now. After the government is working on all the plans and policies that Mr. Shaw have, Mr. Shaw turning around and cursing the IMF.
Caller.
Is the same program the government going off, Mr. President?
Caller, I hear you and I thank you. But let me say this. Thank you, caller. But Ralston.
Finally, Mr. Brown. Now I hear that the Secretariat of the LP is being threatened. Hitler burned down Parliament and the churches and blame it on the Jews.
Hitler? Or Hitler come into this?
Because they are saying that the Secretariat and the JLP is being threatened. And we are saying these people are so desperate. We look at Hitler and he burned down Parliament and burned down churches and blame it on the
caller, the police will investigate whatever allegations are made. But thank you very much.
We live in this country here about Mr.
Thank you very much, caller. Thank you. Ralston.
Yes, sir.
It's kind of strange. Mr. Shaw cursed the IMF bad the other day as a man who was a finance minister and who wants one day to be a finance minister. Yet in December 2009, Mr. Shaw was full of praise of the IMF when they were giving him the same medicine.
Yeah, but one thing that we have to be careful though. We don't want to spend too much time caught up in Mr. Shaw's utterances. What we want to spend the time to do now is to mobilize the nation around the need for a strategy to grow the economy, because based on a combination of things that Mr. Shaw and Dr. Phillips have done, the country is now with its back to the wall, and the only thing that can save us right now is an expansion of production and increases in productivity levels. So we don't want to spend too much time talking about them. What we need to do is to get our people on the fast track and to inspire confidence and to let them know that the only way out of this problem right now is to produce or perish.
Produce or perish. But I also believe the Minister of Finance has to be a part of going forward in terms of that growth strategy.
Right.
Good. Let's take some other call, Ralston. Good evening, caller.
Hi, Lamin.
Yes, sir, how are you doing?
Hi, how are you doing? Ralston.
Yes, sir.
Captain here. How are you doing?
Yes, Captain. Yeah, man.
First of all, let me add two quick points. One is in 2009, Mr. Golden said that the housing trust was broke. You remember that?
Yes, 2007, 2008.
2008. Yeah. It was broke. And having become a director, a board director of the housing trust, when we went there, yourself is one of the directors, we found things totally different, because the funds that was interfered with was almost there when we got there, and it was there before Mr. Golden made those statements.
But Mr. Golden also changed the policies to exactly what the PNP had before. So we learn one thing: when man outside them say anything.
Right, but Mr. Shaw now, and we have to still talk about Mr. Shaw. I remember Mark Wignall wrote before the 2006 election that Mr. Shaw has been giving out a lot of bounce check. And some of the check was...
Mr. Wignall wrote about that?
Mr. Mark Wignall wrote about that, and Mr. Shaw did not rebuke him on that.
Didn't sue him?
No, did not, neither sue him or anything. And these checks were not just checks that pay out one by one. These checks were, some of them were replacement checks for a bounce check.
Well, caller, what on that case recently I would love to hear some response on. as Mr. Shaw settled with Mr. Bunting.
I heard
the mediation, they had agreed to pay a certain amount of money. But Mr. Bunting had to go to court to force him to live up to his signed agreement.
And that still has not been paid.
So call him, maybe the IMF know some of those things why they didn't meet with him. Let me thank you very much.
No, the IMF. I wonder why he was so upset with the IMF, because 2011 he told this nation that he has some money to return to the IMF and they don't know what to do with it.
Maybe
so I wonder if he offered the IMF a bounce check. And
I don't think so, Carla, but take care. Thanks very much. I'll stand Shaw, poor Shaw. Let's take another call. Good evening, caller.
Yeah, gentlemen.
Yes, sir.
Good evening, sir. I like what Mr. Hyman said, about Mr. Shaw. I really believe that we are to stop dignifying Mr. Shaw with response.
Yeah, man, and get on with the job.
To what he's doing and saying. Because what is clear, gentlemen, is that Mr. Shaw, he's a man now. He's at a stage where his credibility is totally damaged, And I'm wondering if because of this damaged credibility, why he knows that he will never be Prime Minister, should not be, Minister of Finance in this country again with that sort of checkered record. But Lammy, you said something that was kind of news to me, though, and I'd like you to repeat it for me. You said something about the budget that was much larger than the last one here presented by Mr. Shaw. In what, I don't remember what year you said it was.
No.
I said it was like a tax. I'm talking about the tax package.
$21 billion in December 2009.
Okay, but yet he said that this last one is the largest ever.
Mr. Shaw, our memory problem.
Okay. Mr. Hyman, the question for you though. Because I hear a lot of people, and I think...
And Carla, before you get to Ralston, expansion of the GCT base,
yes.
6.2 billion.
Okay.
Increasing the standard rate of GCT, 3.6 billion.
Right.
Introduction of the ad valorem component of the special consumption tax and gasoline, 9.4.
Right.
Increasing special consumption tax on cigarette, 1.41.
Okay.
And we could add to that removal of GCT on light bill. Almost $22 billion.
Okay.
Good.
But Mr. Hyman, I want you to correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't it true that in 2007, when the JLP took over from the PNP, the debt to GDP was at 107%?
Yeah.
And the debt was at 958, I think.
972 billion.
So I don't understand against those kind of factual statistics. How is it that people are saying that things were better in 2011 when the debt was $1.6 trillion and the debt was 130% to GDP? How are people...
Caller.
Yes.
As we speak right now, the economy, real GDP, is 5% below where it was in 2007. So we need to get on with the job and stop talking about those people. What we need to do now is to be mobilizing up our people around the need to produce and export more.
Yes, I agree, because you see...
And also, Ralston, import substitution.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And import denial.
Yes.
Not by the custom, but by the citizens of Jamaica.
Right.
I don't need that.
Yeah, because when I see that, like you talked earlier, Mr. Brown, about the puree which comes in to make soursop juice and plum juice and all of that. Why can't we just don't buy those products?
And plant and make them and produce them ourselves.
Yeah, but why we try to plant? Why will it try and establish some orchards to plant these fruits?
That's what we need to be doing.
Yes.
Yeah.
In the meantime, we reject these products. Don't buy them at all.
Right, because if we do not do that, the policies that we're pursuing now to get the IMF agreement are contractionary policies. So we need to have policies to expand the economy.
Yes.
If this thing is going to work.
Yeah, but you've been saying that all along, because if we don't do things to generate economic activity, then the problem is going to get worse.
Well, Carla, one good thing is that more people are buying into what Ralston myself, you and others have been saying. Well,
Yes.
let me thank you for the evening.
Yes,
as I
gentlemen.
take another call.
Okay.
Good evening, caller. Good evening, caller.
Good evening, Mr. Brown.
Yes, sir, welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Iman.
Yes, sir, good evening.
Mr. Iman, I want you to answer this question. You don't agree with this $11 billion that's going to take note of the NHD, right?
No.
All right. Why wouldn't you not agree by listening to Mr. Douglas? He's saying that in the future, this will lead to a reduction in mortgage payment. And if you don't agree, what will be the alternative away from taxing other basic food items?
Hold on.
Hello?
I didn't hear his presentation about how that would lead to a reduction in mortgage payments in the future. I didn't hear that.
Well, he was speaking to Mr.
So I can't comment.
Brown, and he said
I can't comment on that.
You can't comment on that.
No, because I didn't hear that.
Mr. Brown?
Yeah.
I don't know how you would arrive at that. I don't know how.
No, the point is essentially that if we stabilize the economy, one of the benefits could be lower interest rates.
Yeah,
and in the long term, that's a benefit will come back to us owners and people wanting to buy to take out mortgage.
Right.
Good.
But that's a very long shot until you get unless you get the economy to start producing
and then
more.
The point